A new year with some not-so-new priorities for Governor Doug Ducey.
Oh, you're going to see more money for K-12 education in 2018.
Why progress is personal for a Sunnyside alum turned superintendent.
I refuse to believe that our kids can't perform at a better rate.
Arizona's water leaders teaming up to prevent a shortage.
We've come together to slow the decline in Lake Mead.
Welcome to Arizona 360. I'm Lorraine Rivera. On Monday, Governor Doug Ducey will deliver his State of the State address, the last of his first term in office. We met with Governor Ducey at the Capitol and learned, much like 2017, he plans to keep the focus on funding education.
Resources are going to continue to be a focus. We are proud that we were able to bring $223 million additional dollars to K-12 education in 2017, $163 million of that over and above inflation. So the state's on much firmer financial footing. Our teachers do need more resources. They need more money. We want to see them get that pay increase. We're putting hundreds of millions of dollars into K-12 education. Since Prop 123 did pass, we've seen $700 million new dollars. This is since 2015 into K-12 education. And even though we need more, we've got significant funds coming. So I think the idea that our K-12 education system is certainly not perfect, but we are seeing signs of progress, and we're going to see more.
The school boards are actually tasked with being sure these dollars get into the pockets of teachers. Can you do anything as governor or the legislature that would encourage school districts to do more?
We are going to continue to advocate on behalf of teachers and on behalf of more resources for the schools. We're going to work with the legislature and have a responsible budget so we can put those dollars forward. And then we are going to work with the school boards. We're going to work with the principals, the superintendents. We do want these dollars, the first place that they go are to the teachers. Now we know there are other needs. I mean, there's cafeterias, there's the buses, there's capital infrastructure. But to me, so much is solved when you have the right teacher in front of the classroom and they're respected and rewarded and we retain them. So that's what I want to see.
Keeping teachers in their classroom remains an ongoing challenge for district leaders. A report from Arizona State University's Morrison Institute for Public Policy found that out of all 50 states, Arizona ranks last in pay for elementary teachers and 49th for high school teachers. Also in Arizona, 42% of teachers hired in 2013 quit within 3 years, about 2 years sooner than the national average for teacher turnover. On that note, we do have a high teacher turnover rate here. Academically, Arizona students are still not doing well on nationwide tests. What can we do to change that?
Well, a couple things. First, I want to challenge the fact that we're not doing well on nationwide tests. Arizona leads the nation in improvement in 4th grade and 8th grade, and this is reading, math, and science. And this is why I'm saying that we do see signs of progress.
The governor is referring to the National Assessment of Educational Progress that measures academic proficiencies of 4th and 8th grade students. The latest data show Arizona 4th and 8th graders are showing significant signs of improvement. However, when compared to national numbers, Arizona figures are lower in math, reading, and science.
But we do have a teacher shortage here in the state of Arizona, and we're not the only state. There's 48 states, so this isn't just an Arizona issue, it's an American issue. I think part of it is getting more dollars into the classroom so we can pay these teachers more and retain them, bonus them, structure whatever incentive package we need to keep them. But we also need new young people coming into the profession. We have formed the Teachers Academy. That's a way that if a young person commits to teaching 5 years in public education in Arizona, their tuition will be paid for, a job will be waiting, and they'll be debt-free. We think that's quite an offer.
Moving on to business now. We've had a lot of California businesses come here. The critics will also say that the corporate tax rates, the packages that are promised sometimes trickle back into the classrooms or those communities. Will 2018 be any different?
Well, we love the Californians that are coming here to Arizona in the State of the State. I thanked my partner in growing Arizona's economy, and that continues to be California Governor Jerry Brown. They continue to hike taxes in California, increase regulation, and push out productive companies and producers over there, and many of them make just fine Arizonans. So what I want to do is see our tax base continue to increase. You can't put $223 million additional new dollars into K-12 education over the last year unless you've got an increasing tax base. So we think bringing companies here that provide jobs for Arizonans, like what we've seen here in southern Arizona with the expansion of Raytheon, with Comcast and Caterpillar bringing their headquarters here, and then the university bonding package that we have for new President Bobby Robbins so that he can do what's necessary at the university so that research and development and proper studies for the students with the infrastructures there for everyone who studies in a public university in Arizona.
You look back at 2017, and maybe one of the toughest areas for you were the discussions that some of your top staff received some salary raises, whereas teachers did not. Looking back, was that the right move?
Well, I think that falls under the category of don't believe everything that you read. The facts were that there hasn't been one additional dollar spent in the governor's office. If anything, we've balanced our budget, we've tightened our belt, we've brought people from other parts of government and promoted them, given them new jobs at a higher salary than what they received in another branch. But this is oftentimes from a position where they had no direct reports to here where they take over a deputy position and they have 10 direct reports and are responsible for the state budget. And we've been able to do all of that without putting one additional dollar into the governor's office budget while we put $223 million available for teacher salaries. So some of these reporters need to check their facts before they write their articles. We're going to continue to focus. We're not done with teacher salaries, and we're not done with moving additional dollars into K-12 education, but our government now is finally, we actually have 5,000 fewer employees in the government sector at the state level in Arizona, but 140,000 additional employees in the private sector in our economy. That somehow doesn't get reported.
More important than the governor's word, his ability to work with state lawmakers in the legislature to pass bills that support his policies. Something the Arizona Capitol Times in Phoenix follows closely. After our talk with the governor, we went to the Capitol Times newsroom to ask editor and publisher Luige del Puerto how much of Governor Ducey's agenda made it through last year's legislative session.
The governor truly had a pretty good year this year. I mean, he got almost everything he had asked for, except some of the big initiatives that he had pushed for example, university bonding. Now, he didn't quite get it the way he wanted it, but he still got the money for the universities, and universities are very happy about that. A pay raise for teachers. He did get more than 0.4%, which was his initial proposal. On restoring benefits to low-income families, he got that proposal. He wanted it because it was creating financial problems for the state. If you recall, they made that change to cut down the number of years that you can be on TANF to 1 year. And that created a financial difficulty for the state. And so they decided, well, we'll just go back to 2 years. So they passed a law that extended that benefit to at least 2 years, but they also put a lot of strings attached so that some folks are criticizing the proposal because they're saying, look, it's yes, we'll get 2 years, but it might be very easy for those folks to lose the benefits.
Mm-hmm. As we look into 2018, he has continued to say Arizona's open for business. Is it?
Well, you know, the one area that I think a lot of people would agree on, that the governor has been very successful, is sort of positioning the state as a place where new technology could go to and make this their hub. For example, this idea of a sharing economy is something that he has proposed. And nationally, at least, we're getting some attention and drawing some interest. Arizona is now looked at, for example, as a place where car companies want to test their self-driving vehicles as the place to go to. You know, we have been cutting our corporate income taxes. Now, some of our neighbors don't have corporate income taxes, but overall, a lot of people are saying, yeah, it positions the state as somewhat competitive in the region, as a place where you can go expand your business or move your headquarters here. Mm-hmm. Something that, quite frankly, we truly have struggled, which is We don't have a whole lot of company headquarters in Arizona. We have a few, but not a whole lot.
Arizona's boost in school funding has made its way into classrooms across the state, among them the Sunnyside Unified School District on Tucson's southern edge. It's one of the largest in Arizona with a high minority population where more than 80% of the students are on free and reduced lunch. Though none of that should define Sunnyside's path toward progress, says the district's leader, who's determined to motivate and inspire.
All right, I got to hear this. Can I squeeze in? Can we squeeze in?
Tucked inside Sunnyside High School, you'll find a recording studio, teenagers jamming out, and the guy playing the guitar wearing a suit and tie happens to be Superintendent Steve Holmes. An educator for more than 20 years, Sunnyside alumni, musician, and so much more.
That's good. Did you write it or?
Yeah, I wrote it.
Outside of managing an $80 million budget, supervising more than 2,000 people, and influencing the education of 16,000 students, Holmes wants this community to know he's its #1 advocate.
Who read the most?
I did it. I didn't.
When you look at their little faces, do you ever see yourself here?
I do. You know, it's weird because some of these buildings I actually attended, and this was a freshman campus when I was attending school here, and so I do see a lot of myself in a lot of the students.
Born and raised in South Tucson, raised by a single mom and his grandparents, Holmes went on to graduate from the U of A and then Harvard.
You ready? Want to put you in the game? Put you in the game?
We caught up with Superintendent Holmes before winter break between Sunnyside High School and Sierra 2 through 8 school.
Into the kitchen behind her.
Good job, Vicky. Your reading has improved.
Sunnyside schools continue to struggle. According to the Arizona State Board of Education, the latest preliminary letter grades show the district's high schools earned C's, the middle schools received D's, and the majority of elementary schools earned B's and C's.
It's still disappointing, right? Because I walk the classroom, I go in, look at our teachers. There's great things happen, but sometimes we're missing the mark in what the state expects in that assessment and what may be going on in the classroom. So trying to align those efforts a little better, I think is going to pay some dividends in the end.
8, 4.
But Holmes is careful to point out that last year the district and throughout Pima County had the highest, greatest academic gains in math.
I refuse to believe that our kids can't perform at a better rate. Being a former alumni, I think they take that more personally.
So personally, he spends time in the classrooms, talking with students and teachers.
2 newcomers.
2 newcomers, brand new to the country. Wonderful.
Listening to what they think will work, that meant changing the curriculum and showing the teachers and staff he's in their corner. How important is it that the teacher in front of those students recognizes that these kids have things at home that come into the classroom and maybe affect their performance?
Well, I think it's critical. I think being cognizant of some of those are kind of our lifetime work. You know, how do you understand the culture in which you serve, the community in which you serve? We do a lot of work with Luis Simone's Funds of Knowledge work, so that we're not just seeing the potential deficits that may be perceived, but what are the assets that our kids bring.
Then there's funding a district this size in a state that continues to rank at the bottom of per pupil funding and teacher pay. The average teacher's salary at Sunnyside is about $42,000. There are 900 teachers, 41 of them are not certified, and more than half are in a certification program. Last year, the state pumped $3.3 million into the district with Proposition 123 funds.
In some cases, in many cases, the teachers who had been sitting in our district and loyal to our community, who had been frozen for 6 years, were now able to be moved up 6 steps into an appropriate step with the salary range that was appropriate to what the study really found. Still not enough, quite frankly, but it's comparable to what other districts are paying. But we saw it allowed some teachers got up to a $10,000 raise as a result of Prop 123. So it was a great start.
Over the last several years, taxpayers have voted down multiple budget overrides, with the latest failing in November. Then the state's minimum wage increased, placing some longtime employees at the same rate as new employees. You've been on the job for 3 years. You replaced a somewhat controversial leader in the past. Many suspect that's why the budget override did not pass recently. Where are you in convincing the community that this district is headed in a new direction?
That's a great question. I see about 3 issues that were associated. One is still the trust and the lack thereof potentially from previous administration that we continue to work on. The other factor, however, still remains that we have people on fixed incomes. Mm-hmm. We have we have an aging population, and so they may have affinity to our school and love what we do, but they don't see that necessarily translating into something they can afford to. And that was some candid conversations I was able to have with the community. So that was another factor that came into play. And I think the third one, there's still a lot of anti-tax rhetoric out there, along with a lot of bills that were on the ballot. And so it does tend to have a tendency to confuse voters, quite frankly. So we got some work to do. You are very capable. You're brilliant.
More than academics.
I've seen you.
It's about nurturing young minds. Celebrating success. The district's 2 high schools have increased graduation rates. More than 80% of the students earn diplomas.
Are you going to put another code here, or are you just going to keep it blank?
Holmes is proud, but wants them going to college and staying there so they too can make a difference.
Are you hopeful that you can inspire some of these kids to do something different than what they think they may be capable of?
I hope so. I mean, I'm just one of many success stories and from our Sunnyside community. I mean, we have congressmen, we have judges, we have so many people, businessmen in our community. I don't think we do a good enough job of telling our story or bringing those alumni back. There's a certain connection, unique connection you make when you grew up in this community that I'm hoping to inspire.
And joining us now is Ricky Hernandez, CFO for Pima County School Superintendent Office. Ricky, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin with, at the local level, that's how dollars from the state are really disseminated.
Correct. Yeah. Our local school boards, our local superintendents are really ultimately making the kinds of decisions they need to make to support their schools, their kids, their teachers in their communities. So the decisions that are made here locally are probably the ones that impact the most in the classroom.
And oftentimes the district will decide we need to put that money toward capital improvements versus teacher pay.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of the competing interest that we've come to right now, with teacher retention and teacher recruitment being so important related to teacher pay. We're finding ourselves at a time where we have to compete between how we pay teachers an adequate salary and how we maintain a safe and healthy environment for kids to learn.
When the state legislature, the governor announced that there are X amount of more dollars, millions of dollars for a school district, can they decide where that money should go?
Generally, they can decide. Sometimes we do find ourselves receiving pots of funding from the legislature and the governor that come with certain levels of strings. For example, the recent 1.06% salary increase or raise for teachers did come with very specific elements, very specific criteria that school districts were required to use in order to distribute those dollars to teachers.
Is there a way for the state to really monitor and ensure that's taking place?
Usually they'll implement some sort of auditing standard in a school district's annual audit to ensure that they've complied with the request of the legislature.
Before the interview began, you mentioned a figure to me of how do we get Arizona where it needs to be in order to offer competitive packages to lure teachers to Arizona.
So one of the figures that's pretty remarkable that's out there is there's a lot of discussion about getting Arizona teachers to the median average salary across the United States. And in order for Arizona to get there, we would need an extra $950 million just to get teachers to the average salary of other teachers across the country. That's certainly a daunting figure, knowing full well that we're $2 billion in back pay on capital infrastructure needs from the state legislature and the governor as well.
You're the guy in Pima County who watches the checkbook. Are we making progress toward getting there?
We're certainly making some progress, but it has a lot to do with a lot of the creativity that our school finance officials, that our superintendents are doing in their respective communities to try to make those dollars go a lot further, going back to their voters for things like overrides and bonds in order to accomplish the things that they need to do for their schools.
Because there's a base pay that the state will give to per pupil spending, but then there are other factors that jump those numbers up.
Certainly, every school district, every charter school in Pima County receives basically an equalized portion of state aid. But in particular, school districts have this ability to conduct an override election or ask for bonding authority in order to augment or to support additional programs that their communities feel are important for their kids.
Arizona's water supply is arguably our state's most important resource, and it's vulnerable to drought and a growing demand as more people call the desert home. The U.S. Census Bureau estimates more than 7 million people live in Arizona, an increase of more than 9% since 2010. While Governor Ducey only mentioned water once in his 2017 State of the State address, when we sat down with him recently, he was more vocal about the challenges ahead.
What we want to see is the state speak with one voice regarding water. We want to make certain that we don't pick winners and losers on this, that we collaborate on water, and that we think long term. The last thing that we're going to do is bad water policy or cut corners so that we can have development. When we're growing in the state of Arizona, we want to make sure that there are assured water resources for all Arizonans.
The collaboration Governor Ducey says he wants to see is already visible in Tucson Water's efforts to conserve what it gets from the Colorado River, and the infrastructure put in place now benefits communities across Arizona.
This is kind of the key to our future.
Most of the water Tucson gets from the Colorado River can end up here, collecting in sprawling recharge basins. It's just one of 20 basins Tucson Water has stretched across hundreds of acres at 2 sites, the Southern Avra Valley Storage and Recovery Project and the Central Avra Valley Storage and Recovery Project. As Fernando Molina with Tucson Water explains, both sites play a critical role in restoring water to southern Arizona's aquifers.
Just by filling up these basins, by gravity, the water makes its way 300 feet down to the water table. So we have some purification, some filtration that takes place with that. But more importantly, it gives us the ability to store water over the years.
Prior to 2003, before switching to this method, Tucson pumped groundwater at a rate faster than aquifers could naturally recharge. Since then, the basins have become a conservation tool, even for cities outside of Tucson.
We're actually storing water for the city of Phoenix out here. This is Colorado River water that they can't use today, but if they don't use it, they kind of don't have it later in the future. And so we've worked out an agreement with them where they will store extra water here in our recharge facilities at no cost to us. They're paying the full cost for this.
For 2017, Molina estimates the basins at these 2 sites recharged more than 127,000 acre-feet of water back into the ground, enough to create a column of water that spans a football field and reaches 24 miles high.
These are ancient river channels underneath there, so the geology is lots of sands and gravels and cobbles and things that water flows very quickly through. Some of these basins can put 3 feet of water a day in.
Molina says storing water this way puts Tucson Water at an advantage when planning for potential shortages along the Colorado River.
Moving forward, we still want to make sure that we continue with a strong water conservation ethic here, how we use the water. It's not just that we use it, but how we use it. You know, one of the things that's very different today is we're considering rainwater harvesting a water conservation method. Rainwater and stormwater for decades has been more of dealing with it as a nuisance so that you prevent flooding. Now we're rethinking that. That's a part of the urban water supply that we need to rethink how we use that. And also stormwater, water that's in the streets. How can we use that to maybe green up the community? One of the things that worries us is trees. We need to plant more trees here. We're a desert community, it gets hot, it's only going to get hotter, and if you don't have trees, it's going to be even worse.
When you look 10 to 15 years down the road, what are you preparing for? What are you thinking there needs to be a plan to address?
Well, that's a really good question, because we're actually in the process right now of completely updating our long-range water plan. We have a 50-year water plan. Now it's time to sit back and not just do an update, but really reassess and reevaluate all of the information that's out there related to long-term availability of water from Colorado River. What role does conservation have? You know, one of the big concerns that we have is if people reduce their water use too much, we could have a negative impact on quality of life.
In the short term, Tucson Water will continue to help outside communities get the most out of their share of the Colorado River.
What we've done is we've worked out an agreement with 1 or 2 utilities where they take their Colorado River water, they recharge it here, we pump it back out, and we deliver it to them. And the advantage to the region is they stop pumping their groundwater wells, and we begin to see the water table rise when that happens. So cooperative agreements on all aspects with water, I think, is really key as we look into the future.
Nearly 400 miles to the north of Tucson, it doesn't take an expert to see water levels in Lake Mead aren't what they used to be. For years now, the so-called bathtub ring serves as a reminder that less water is flowing into the reservoir, which Arizona, California, Nevada, and Mexico rely on for their allotments from the Colorado River. Technically, the lake is at less than half capacity. The Central Arizona Project tells us not to expect any shortages this year, largely thanks to conservation efforts from more than a dozen entities. Chuck Collom, who manages CAP's Colorado River programs, explains.
Currently, Lake Mead is around 37–38% capacity. I don't think any water manager is happy with a 40% storage, but on the positive side, we've come together to slow the decline in Lake Mead. Instead of falling further, we've been stable since 2015. We've been hovering around elevation 1080, which is above the shortage elevation of 1075 feet above sea level. Central Arizona Project, with our partners and all of our ratepayers, have supported and funded conservation programs since 2014 that have contributed more than 10 feet of water in Lake Mead. That has been through partnerships with 3 Native American communities, 4 municipal water providers, 12 irrigation districts just within Arizona. There's sufficient supplies in Lake Mead and Lake Powell that we will avoid shortage for another year.
If a shortage is declared on the Colorado River, federal guidelines dictate that Arizona would take the biggest reductions in the lower basin. Within the state, agricultural areas would feel the effects of the cuts first. We asked George Frisvold, a professor with the U of A's Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics, to explain some of the challenges rural communities face when managing their water supply.
Growers are going to have to either choose, either they fallow their land, so they produce less, or they switch back to pumping groundwater, which they have a right to do. And they've actually been banking a lot of their water because they've been using surface water instead. But that said, because growers have shifted to renewable surface water, if they go back to pumping, a lot of them haven't been renovating and investing in new capital equipment to pump groundwater. So they'd have to incur all the cost of doing that, or they just might not grow as many crops. People in Phoenix, people in Tucson, when you go to the grocery store, you may not notice that all that much. But in rural communities, if you're in Pinal County or areas that depend on agriculture, they're going to get hit a lot more. For example, if farmers stop growing crops, they just fallow their fields, okay, they're not buying any inputs. So anybody who sells inputs to agriculture, suddenly they don't have income. Also, when farmers and ranchers have money, they spend their paychecks, they spend their profits in the local community. So that money would go away too. So I think people aren't really necessarily going to notice it too much when they go to the checkout counter. And for things like produce, so much of our produce comes from Yuma County, which has very senior water rights, that we might not even notice that. So just because people in the cities don't notice it doesn't mean that there isn't going to be real hurt in rural economies.
This is a $23 billion agribusiness industry in the state of Arizona. It ultimately affects the pocketbooks, though, of the average consumer, correct?
So it's going to be through production and jobs. Like I said, I don't think people are going to go and look at their grocery bill and go, wow, everything's a lot more expensive now because of this cutoff. And I think that's what makes agriculture vulnerable, is because people take it for granted.
Before we wrap our first episode of Arizona 360, we want to thank you for joining us in our mission to bring you the latest in public affairs. Over the next few weeks, we look forward to sharing deeper discussions about issues that matter to you. We'll also be revealing a new look here at Arizona Public Media, and we want you to be a part of this new program. You can send feedback to arizona360@azpm.org. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again next week.